Hey guys, it's Miss Sinclair for AP World History Modern. Today we are continuing to learn about our Unit 0 concepts, in this case, Rome. So we've covered the ancient civilizations, we did Persia and Greece, and today we're doing Rome. As always, concepts from Unit 0 will not be on this year's AP exam, but they provide a really important foundation for the rest of our year. I expect that you are taking notes in whatever way you find best. I recommend handwriting your notes. Remember that bolded terms are vocabulary words. You can find a complete list of vocabulary words on our unit overview. I always recommend printing it out so then you can highlight the terms as we go over them. I also want you to be completing a daily cover page in conjunction with today's lecture. You will be turning that in to me on turnin.com. And if you are one of my students, you're watching this on Edpuzzle, and you are going to be answering the questions associated with it. Okay? All right, let's get started. So for your bell work, I want you to identify 3 continuities or changes from the beginning to the end of ancient Greece. Continuity and change are a couple of those really important historical thinking skills that the AP wants you to develop. So see if you can identify some of them on your own. Today, we are talking about the Roman Republic. We'll spend 2 days on Rome. You could literally spend years learning about Rome. We're spending 2 days, which is really more than the AP wants us to spend, but how can we not learn about Rome? So today we'll learn about the Republic. Tomorrow, or whenever you watch the next video, we'll learn about the Empire. So you will be able to identify and explain one method used by the Roman Empire to establish control. The Roman Republic. Okay, so let's begin with geography. We always start with geography, it seems. Rome is going to be located in Italy. Do I have a map anywhere close? No, I don't. Sorry. Located in Italy. So geographically, it has some useful resources. So its central location, the city of Rome, is located in central Italy. And its central location contributed to unifying the Italian peninsula and the lands around the Mediterranean, right? Where Rome is makes it easy access for the rest of the Italian peninsula and easy access to the entire Mediterranean. We also see that there are lots of navigable rivers in Italy, and some of those go through Rome. The Tiber goes through Rome, making it, again, easy access. It has a mild climate, which allows for a long growing season and a wide variety of crops. At this time, the Italian hills were all forested. There's bears, there's wolves. Italy itself is very hilly and mountainous. There is the Apennines, which run along Italy like a spine. And then you have the Alps at the top and the Dolomites. So Italy's set up to be really sort of support a large population, and geographically they're in a good place for political conquest. So let's talk about the myth of Rome. It really begins, and a foundational idea of how Rome would view itself is a republic of farmers, right? So here's the myth. There is a young woman. In some versions of the story, she's a priestess. In some stories, she's just a young woman. She is raped by the god Ares, god of war. The Roman name for Ares is going to be Mars. Ares is a Greek god. Anyways, she's raped by the god of war, and she gets pregnant. And she gives birth to twins, Romulus and Remus. Well, she abandons them by the Tiber River and a she-wolf nurses them. So hence the statue in the upper corner of these two babies suckling a wolf. A she-wolf nurses them until they are eventually found by a farmer who raises them as his own. They grow up to be great warriors. They found the city of Rome. Eventually, Romulus murders Remus and takes power. That's why the city is Rome, not Rheme. And the first inhabitants of the city are going to be predominantly criminals and migrants, right? Everyone else is already kind of settled. They have land, they have communities, right? So who's moving to this new city? People who aren't welcomed anywhere else. Immigrants and criminals. So the other thing about immigrants and criminals is that they're mostly dudes. No ladies around. Well, how do you build a city without women, right? It kind of puts a damper on family planning. So they go to the neighboring communities and are like, hey, we're nice guys, very handsome, strong, check us out. Why don't you let us marry your daughters? And the neighboring communities are like, no, pass. You're criminals. You murdered your brother, super skeevy. No. So instead, they go and kidnap all the daughters, bring them back to Rome, and force them to be their wives. So this is called the rape of the Sabine women. You can see a statue there depicting it of women being kidnapped and forced against their will. So this is the myth, right? History is all about interpretation. Nope. And one of the things that is really interesting to look at is the stories that we tell about ourselves. All right, so the myth of, American independence involves George Washington and the founding fathers, and we're these plucky underdogs, and we just wanted to fight for our freedom against the oppressive British. Well, the reality is going to be a little bit more complicated. The reality is that the British were taxing us highly for tea because the East India Company was almost bankrupt over in Asia, and since the British Empire is an empire, they needed to sort of tax everyone, and they had just spent a lot of money protecting us from the French. And the founding fathers were more interested in preserving the status quo than having a revolution, right? The American Revolution is not very revolutionary. Most things stay the same. The rich stay rich, the poor stay poor, the disenfranchised still don't have any rights. But the rich white guys get to keep a little bit more of their money. So founding myths are really informative about what we value and how we view ourselves. What does it say about Rome that the founding myth involves multiple instances of rape, murder, fratricide, right? One brother killing another, and criminals. So that's a myth, right? The reality, there's lots of ways this has been interpreted. If there were a couple dudes named Romulus and Remus, chances are that their dad was a god, slim. Interestingly enough, she-wolf in Latin was actually a nickname for female prostitutes. So it might be that a couple babies were abandoned by the river and a prostitute found them and, took care of these babies until they were eventually raised by a farmer. But we know that the city of Rome has been inhabited as early as 1000 BCE. And according to legend, there were 7 kings between 753 BCE and 507 BCE. So 7 kings for about 150 years. And the kingship is going to be eliminated in about 500 BCE when representatives of the senatorial class, these are our large landowners, overthrow the last king and establish a republic, right? So This is the Roman Republic that we all know and love. The Roman Republic is going to be the governing system of Rome during the period from 500 to 31 BCE, during which Rome is going to be largely governed by an aristocratic Roman Senate. So Rome is going to be predominantly agricultural, right? Whereas Athens and Greece was predominantly trade-oriented, maritime trade. Agriculture is going to be an essential economic activity, and land is going to be the foundation of wealth. Keep that in mind. That's going to be a continuing theme and challenge to Rome because land is the foundation of wealth. So, social status, political privilege, fundamental rights, these were all based on land ownership. So let's talk about the Republic itself. You had the Senate. The Senate is going to be made up of members of the aristocracy. They are going to hold all executive offices in Rome. So that means it's the rich people, it's these senators who are making the laws, who are executing the laws, who are really doing the governing. Then you also have the General Assembly. The General Assembly is going to be comprised of plebeians, commoners, and ultimately the General Assembly has very little power. The votes of the wealthy counted more than the votes of the poor. So the two, you have a Senate, you have a General Assembly, and you have two consuls, right? So in the same way that we have our American Senate, right, and we have the House of Representatives, and we have the President. The idea is that Congress, Senate, and House of Representatives makes the laws, but it is the job of the President to execute the laws, to see that they're enforced. Similarly, that's the position of the consuls. So the consuls shared, there's two of them, and they shared executive power and controlled the military. They are going to change fairly frequently. If there was a problem, like a war or something like that, the Senate could appoint a dictator to hold emergency power for 6 months. But there's lots of social inequality in Rome. So you have a few people, the very wealthiest, are patricians, and everyone else is a plebeian. So occasionally the plebeians, the poor, would rise up and put pressure on the patricians, right? And this will create some change. One example of this change would be the 12 tables and tribunes. So the 12 tables were was law, right? It was laws saying things like everyone gets a trial, like if you're a male plebeian, right? Blah blah blah, and they were like all the rules were printed out on 12 tables, and they were passed out in all the cities of Rome. So the tribunes were full of plebeians who could either veto or block the actions of the assembly. So it gives the plebeians a little bit more power. Society in Rome is super hierarchical, right? So at the top, we have the patricians. Sorry, let me go back really fast. One more thing about the 12 tables. The 12 tables are going to be really significant, primarily because so much of Western law, European and thus American legal codes, are actually based on the 12 tables, right? This codified legal system from Rome. It allowed Rome to expand its laws and its system of justice throughout the empire. But in reality, it was very difficult to enforce. Some of the principles included in the 12 tables included The defendant is innocent unless proven guilty in a court of law. Defendants have the right to confront their accusers in court. Judges may set aside laws they feel are unjust. So these should sound familiar, right? These are part of our own legal system, which shows the long-lasting influence of Rome. So during the Roman Republic, we see that all male citizens, not everyone was a citizen, but all male citizens had the right to vote. But the weight of your vote changed depending on how wealthy you were. Okay? All right, let's talk about society. So very hierarchical, very patriarchal. So fundamental to the Roman social and economic system is going to be the patron-client relationship. So it's a social relationship in which the patron is a wealthy and powerful individual, and they will provide legal and economic protection and assistance to their clients, who would be men of lesser means and status. In return, the clients would support the political careers and economic interests of their patron. Right? So it's someone wealthy and powerful looking out for the little guy, and in return, the little guy makes sure to keep that person in power in whatever way it might be, political or economic power. This is foundational, right? It was very common to have multiple clients, right? Certain people were considered to be really good patrons. Families and individuals were tied together through the patron-client relationships. And this institutionalized inequality, right? One family, the client family, is always going to be indebted to the patron family. So it institutionalizes inequality, and it gives both sides a reason to cooperate and support the status quo, right? It's in everyone's interest to preserve this inequality. Nevertheless, periodic conflicts emerged between the patrician elite and the plebeian majority. Rome is also very patriarchal, just like Greece was very patriarchal. So it was this whole idea of the pater familias. Fathers and husbands had complete control over the family. So women might be active in small artisan businesses, but they might be farmers or could own property. However, you see it really depends on your social class. Poor women had to work, right? I mean, that's always the reality. People are like, oh, the changing roles of women. The reality is, poor women throughout history have always had to work. If you have very little, you have to help support your family. The question is sort of like the middle and upper class. Women had fewer legal rights than men, had to remain indoors, and had no political rights, like they could not vote. However, they were less restrained than Greek women, and over time, women in Rome got more political and economic freedom. Romans really valued women who were intelligent and advised their husbands well, right? So it was in the interest of a woman to pay attention to what's going on in the world and to be well informed. That would make you a valuable wife. Okay, let's talk about slaves. So slaves made up about 1/3 of Rome's population. Aristotle, if you remember, believed slavery was natural. It was part of just society. So slaves in Rome were similar to slaves in Greece. Captives from war, served primarily in the home in big cities or in mines. But many slaves had close relationships with their owners, were trusted, and over time, you could like hire your slave out. A slave could save up money and buy their own freedom. And yet, despite all this, you have this split between citizens and non-citizens, right? So you might be a freedman, right? You might be free, but not be a citizen of Rome. All right. I still have to talk about religion. So, Roman religion was very similar to Greek religion, right? They're very polytheistic. Gods represented natural phenomena and had human forms. The Romans built their system of religion off the Greek pantheon. So that's why, like, Athena in Greece became Minerva in Rome. Zeus in Greece became Jupiter in Rome. Mars, Ares, Hades, Pluto. You get the gist. People believe that what they did for the gods directly impacted their daily lives, right? So the gods were imperfect. They were human. So if you offered sacrifices, if you sort of bribed them, then you would be blessed. So many people had patron gods. Rome was full of ceremonies and festivals to honor the gods, but none of this generates a long-lasting global religion. In part because they were so polytheistic, there was no need to conformity. It was like, believe what you want to believe. Yeah, if like you have a god that you've already been worshiping, like that's cool. Add them to the list, right? But they didn't necessarily like seek to evangelize. Okay. What were two major successes of the Roman Republic? And I'd like you to please compare Greek and Roman society. So you're going to answer this in an Edpuzzle response. Okay, let's talk about this expansion of Rome. So, it begins with the Punic Wars. Before we jump into that, let's answer the question, why did Rome bother to expand, right? We already established that they're in a really great location on the Italian peninsula and to do trade with other people. Like, why bother conquering? Well, some historians have argued it was greed and aggressiveness, right? Romans love war. They are always seeking to conquer new people and get riches and rape and pillage and blah, blah, blah. Other people have said, well, the Roman society and structure encouraged war. They rewarded it. In general, Romans felt insecure. They felt vulnerable in their location. So they expanded, not primarily to conquer others for the sake of conquering others, but to try and create a buffer between the city of Rome themselves and their enemies. And then this just repeats, right? As they grow more confident, the outer reaches feel more part of the republic. Okay, well, we don't want those parts vulnerable. We need a new buffer. So this is going to mean that the consuls will need to prove themselves to be competent military commanders during their single year of office. And Rome was under constant fear of being attacked. So the Roman military is pretty legendary, right? All male citizens owning land had to serve. They used armor similar to the Greek hoplites, but the armor was much more flexible, allowing for greater movement. They were famous for their discipline and their training, and often sheer numbers won the day. So one of the things that Rome did when they conquered a new place is they would often grant citizenship to the conquered peoples, right? This is a way to get the new people on your side especially the powerful. Because you conquer a place and like people are going to feel kind of resentful, like, you just conquered us, like I don't like you. They're like, well, being Roman's pretty sweet. And now you're a citizen, so you have access to all of our trade and our wealth and, you know, our legal system's better and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And let's bribe the king and wealthy people so they will support any uprisings and we're good. So the Punic Wars are going to be a series of wars between the Roman Republic and the Kingdom of Carthage. So Carthage was a city on the opposite side of the Mediterranean do I have a map? So Carthage was like right here in like modern day Tunisia. So the First Punic War is going to be fought on the island of Sicily in the northern coast of Africa. Rome wins, and Carthage has to pay tribute to Rome. Essentially, they pay a tax to Rome for the courtesy of surviving. Rome is going to continue to expand and gain control over the Western Mediterranean, Sicily, the island of Sardinia, and Spain. Thus, we have the Second Punic War. The Second Punic War is infamous because of their leader, their general, Hannibal. Hannibal is going to invade Italy from the north. So he's going to come over the Alps, right? Everyone expects you to attack Italy from the sea. He's going to be like, no, I'm going around. They're never going to expect me coming from behind. And he comes across the Alps on elephants, war elephants. It's just the coolest thing. So Rome fights back. And here's the thing. A lot of people think Hannibal could have won. Carthage could have won. But for some reason in northern Italy, he pauses. Now, there's various theories for why this was. Need to regroup. Maybe he wanted to see if he could convince some of the large landowners in Italy to come to his side so he wouldn't have to fight them all. But essentially, whatever reason it was, his pause gives Rome a chance to regroup, and then they fight back. And they win. So, they take back their, peninsula. And thus, the Carthaginian Empire exists only as the city of Carthage now. The Third Punic War. The Third Punic War had no good excuse. Carthage wasn't attacking them anymore. You have some stories of the Senator Cato, who hated Carthage and wanted them to be destroyed, making these dramatic speeches on the Senate floor, pulling out his toga, his pocket, some fresh grapes, and are these grapes came from Carthage yesterday. Look how fresh they are. If grapes this fresh could come across the sea, imagine how quickly we could be overrun by an army. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're right. Certainly the grapes should be rotten, right? Or it's guys. So they decide to invade and attack the city of Carthage. And they burn it to the ground. Carthage was one of the most developed cities. It had this amazing library, and they just murder everyone. It's a total bloodbath. There's stories of them murdering soldiers and then hurling their heads across the wall to psychologically freak out the Carthaginians. It was a bloodbath. But they win. So between the years 230, they defeat the Hellenistic kingdom. So all the kingdoms were in the Greek Isles, and take control of the Eastern Mediterranean. Gaius Julius Caesar, in the 50s BCE, is going to conquer the Gaul, so the French. And the Romans started to resist passing on citizenship to some of these really far-flung places. So let's look at this image. It's going to show the spread of Rome over time. All right, that's them taking Carthage. All right, now we've switched to the Roman Empire. That's why it's purple. So this is under the leadership of the Caesars, the kings. Now that's when Rome splits in half, and then you can see the decline of Rome over time. Green is what we're going to become known as the Byzantine Empire. All right, let's see it again. So there's the birth of just a city. Then they start expanding till they have the Italian continent, Mediterranean area. So Sicily, Sardinia, Spain, Hellenistic islands, North Africa, the Gauls. Then we have an empire. You can see why Rome was so revered. All right, let's look at this map. So, let me move my face out of the way. All right, here's the city of Rome itself. Then, by 200 BCE, they have conquered the Italian subcontinent. Then they get some islands. Sicily, Sardinia, Corsica, then essentially what's modern day, the Alps, it's Switzerland, and southern Spain, so they get the western Mediterranean. Then you have the Punic Wars, they get Gaul, they get North Africa, they get Carthage, then the Greek islands, the Hellenistic kingdoms. They conquered a lot of people really quickly. This is a really great video. I would like you to watch this one. A Day in the Life of a Roman Soldier. It's a TED Ed. It's like 5 minutes long. It's pretty interesting. It gives you a good sense of the discipline and the motivation. Like, why would you sign up to be a soldier? So, I would like you to answer this question. Oh, go back. What were the economic and cultural consequences of this expansion? We haven't talked about this specifically. I want you to apply what you know, thinking about how Rome is now spread beyond its borders, right? It now encompasses like the entire Mediterranean. What are going to be some of the economic consequences of that? Positive and negative. Cultural consequences, positive and negative. Please answer this question in Edpuzzle. Let's see if I can get my face back. All right, so failure of the Republic. Yeah, Rome's going to go on for a lot longer, but not as a republic. We see the decline of the small family farm, essentially, right? Rome prided itself as being like a republic of farmers, right? The little man. Now, you have these massive estates. Wealth is being consolidated into the hands of the few. So they are going to use cheap labor, slave labor, right? They're going to get slaves from all these conquered lands to work on these massive estates instead of hiring locals, which is going to disenfranchise many small farmers. So many of these poor farmers will have to leave their homes, sell their family farm, and move to Rome, move to a city to try and find work. Well, there was no work available because along with the farmers moving to the big city, you also have migrants from all of these far-flung places in the Roman Empire. So these growing urban masses would really start to riot. The infrastructure was not established to support such a large urban population, right? So you have issues of clean water. The Tiber had lots of malaria in it. There was a shortage of housing, a shortage of work, shortage of food. So with fewer farmers, we had smaller armies. Remember, the armies were made up of landowners. So while men from independent farming families were forced to devote their lands to military service, large landowners would buy up that land when they were away at war to create these large estates. This meant the decline of both Rome's source of soldiers and a decline in food production, because these large landowners would grow cash crops instead of food crops. They would grow grapes instead of wheat, for example. Because slave labor was cheap in an expanding empire, Italian peasants were driven off their land and not employed by the estate owners. They drifted into cities where they formed a fractious and unhappy urban underclass. So, how do you command these people? Well, we see over time, ambitious men would start to lead the armies, and the armies would be more loyal to their commander than to the state, right? I'm more loyal to Julius Caesar, to Pompey, to Sulla, right? He looks out to me. What has Rome done for me, right? It's taken my land. It's taken my neighbor's land. Like, we have less food every day for my family. Rome's done nothing for me. Pompey, though, he's looked out for me. He's provided for me. He's paid me. So, this does not lead to a stable legal system. As independent farming families disappeared as a source of soldiers, Roman commanders built their armies from the underclass, right? They would just go to the cities and be like, who wants a job? You can be a job as a soldier. Like, join the Roman legion, have honor, be paid, get land. So the underclass, these soldiers would be loyal to the commander who gave them a chance. And this is going to lead the generals to take control of politics. Why do we have to listen to this dumb Senate? Why can't I do what I want? Which is going to lead to civil wars and will eventually lead to the end of the Republic itself. So, what led to the decline of the Roman Republic? And imagine the Roman Republic in today's century. Do you think it could survive? Right? If you could sort of transpose the idea of Rome to 2020, do you think it could work? Okay, let's talk just a little bit about the Roman Principate, the Roman Empire, before we get into anything else. So I'm just going to introduce this, the concept of the empire today, and then we'll talk more about it later. So it starts with Julius Caesar. Actually, it starts with Pompey and Sulla. So Julius Caesar is going to be the winner out of a civil war between the Roman generals. And he is going to declare himself emperor, consul for life, dictator for life, right? The Roman Republic is going to remain in name, right? You're still going to have a Senate, you're still going to have a General Assembly, but they're not really going to have any power from this point on. From here on out, it's a monarchy. And the king, the emperor, is going to hold power. So, on March 15th, the Ides of March, in the year 44, the Roman Republic dissolves, and then Caesar's assassinated by his fellow senators. Julius Caesar's nephew, Octavian, who will become known as Augustus, will take power after his uncle. And there will be a civil war between Octavian and Mark Antony. Mark Antony was another one of these Roman generals. So when we're talking about the Roman Principate, this is the term I'm using to characterize the Roman government for the next 300 years, right? Rome was around for like 800 years, almost 1,000 years. So the first part of Rome was a republic. From here on out, it's an empire. So the Principate is based off the word princepts, first citizen. So if Julius Caesar shifts gears, it's really going to be Octavian, aka Augustus, who really forms the Roman Principate into the shape that will continue on. He is super smart, young. He is going to maintain the forms of the Republic, the offices, the honors, the privileges of the senatorial class, but he changes the reality of what that power means. He's going to rule as military dictator for life. Remember, a dictator could be elected for 6 months. Not anymore, it's for life. Augustus is really patient. He has an intuitive grasp of human nature. He's smart. And this is going to make him really good at manipulating all levels of Roman society. So, during the reign of Augustus, we will see that Egypt, parts of the Middle East, and, sorry, I lost my place in my notes. Central Europe will be added to the empire. He will make paid civil servants out of a class of wealthy merchants and landowners to manage this growing empire. Right, so he's going to expand the bureaucracy, and he's going to raise people up who were wealthy, but perhaps not part of that upper senatorial echelon, to positions of power, but far from him, where they can't be a threat. He will ally himself with the equites, the second richest people after the senatorial class. And it's going to be these people. They're very competent. They're self-assured. They've worked for their wealth as opposed to the senators who've just inherited it. And they're going to be the ones who really make up this new civil service. He will create an honest, consistent, and efficient bureaucratic system. After he dies, several members of his family succeeded him because he was so popular. The position of emperor is not necessarily hereditary. In theory, the Senate affirmed the emperor, right? The Senate picked the emperor. In reality, the army picked the emperor. Later, emperors would figure out how to choose their heir, right? So it wouldn't necessarily be their biological son, but they would say, like, you will be emperor after me. I'm adopting you and training you up. So the emperor held executive power, and as his power increases, the power of the Senate decreases. Rather than laws developing through assemblies and the Senate, the emperor becomes a major source of laws in Rome. The development of Roman law really culminates in the 6th century CE and becomes the foundation of all European law in general. Roman law was studied, it was interpreted, it was rewritten, and law fell generally into 3 categories. You had people, things, and actions. Over time, the republican aspect of Roman life decreased. Conquered people were allowed a lot of self-rule, provided they did not rebel against the emperor, and many of these conquered regions continued to be offered citizenship. So you can see how much of Rome was ruled by Augustus, right? A lot of this territory had been conquered prior to him, but he expands it. Hadrian will add even more territory, including Britain and the entirety of North Africa. But they never get into Parthia, like the Persian area. All right, I recommend you watch the crash course. You can watch all of it now. You can watch it up to essentially Julius Caesar and then pause and watch the rest of it when we finish up our lecture on another day. But before the end of the unit, I'd like you to watch the entirety of this crash course. We're going to do a couple practice questions to finish up the day. We're going back, practicing another one of these source-based multiple choice questions, but I'm not asking you about Rome, I'm asking you about Egypt. See if you guys remember stuff from our first day of lecture. So remember, you can pause the video, you can go back, but our source here is a cow being milked in ancient Egypt around 2000 BCE. So, the image supports which of the following characteristics of the Neolithic Revolution? Neolithic Revolution, agricultural revolution, same thing. So take a moment, discuss, decide on answer. Remember, I'm not going to go over the answers in the video. You're going to answer this in Edpuzzle. One long-term effect associated with the practices such as those shown in the image was, take a moment. Here's the tricky thing, right, about these source-based multiple choice questions. The answer is not obvious. It's not like, what was the name of Egypt's king? They require you to think, all right, what would be a long-term effect associated by these practices? And this is not something I explicitly went over, so it requires you to really think and process and understand the information. If you're scrambling here, again, use this as a self-assessment tool. It tells you that you were exposed to the information, but you haven't learned it yet. Read your textbook. Go over your notes every day. Make flashcards. One short-term effect associated with the practices, such as those shown in the image, was, okay? Take as much time as you need on those. Please answer them in Edpuzzle to the best of your ability. Please don't cheat. These do not count against you if you get them wrong. It's a self-assessment tool. So, for your summary, I would like you to identify and explain one method used by the Roman Republic to establish control. Then I would like you to compare and contrast the Roman Republic with the Roman Principate. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I am always available. I am not available always, but I am very frequently available, and I'm always available during the school day. Thanks for listening, guys. Have a great day.